party to remember. It was warm for that late in autumn. I'd been waiting for my parents to fall asleep so I could make my usual escape, my window overlooking the garage roof before a short, half-story plummet to the roof of our doghouse. As a wild teen, I was always looking for a little freedom. I'd ignored my girlfriend's calls as well. That night I was going out with the boys. I was the first one in my friend group to get my license, a fleeting form of popularity that must be capitalized upon in its timeliness. I made my way to my car, quietly opening the gate to the driveway to avoid detection. I'm no linebacker, but for a little guy I am strong, and pushing my car away from the house before I started was no big deal. When I was far enough away to start my engine, I briefly craved my girlfriend's company. Perhaps if I had seen her, I could have avoided this memory that keeps me up at night, and the warranted paranoia that follows. It's slow going avoiding curfew tickets by driving on gravel. I picked up my three friends, Taylor, the popular kid, Tim, the moody kid, and Bill, the nerd. And me, I was the glue, and the rebel who knew where to find the parties. It must have been 1:30 in the morning when we pulled up to the spot, a little alcove hidden away on a gravel road, well beyond where the cops bothered to explore if they're not asked to. We met in a small gravel parking lot in front of a Midwestern forest. Nothing fancy, but it was one of our spots. My friend Jack was well into his bottle of gin when we arrived. I all but had to beg permission to smoke from my bag and fire up a cigarette before the games began. Of course our game would be hide and seek. Literally the dumbest thing high school party animals could play in the woods at night. With a good group of guys around, you need to act tough, but in a large group of guys it's easy to do. So, off into the woods we went, without flashlights, trusting our damaged senses and the full moon to find base, the biggest tree by the parking lot. The game went as well as they always did. I used to suck at hide and seek in those days. I was far too chipper, despite my dark clothes and long hair, and would chuckle when the finder was close but couldn't see me. I'd be it forever, too. They'd whisper my name like a bunch of B-movie ghouls until I was nearly in tears. But eventually, I'd find someone, and would be better at keeping my mouth shut in the next round, if only to avoid the terror of a new round of having to look for a gang of pretend monsters. The next time I was hiding, I decided it had been too long since I last smoked, as is always the case with that old, disgusting habit, and I decided I could stand a good puff as well. I moved further out than normal, by at least 50 yards, well beyond earshot of a lighter click and a subtle cough. Having my own private party was nice, too. It was nearing 3 in the morning, and none of my friends had offered up any party favors. A license and a job, I sighed to think, might have truly bought their so-called friendship. But my laments are mere digressions, and my warning to you readers is worth reaching. My phone buzzed. I thought for sure it was one of my friends ready to go home, but to my happy surprise it was my lovely Kayla, still awake and not too furious with me. I apologized for blowing her off, and lightly explained what I had been up to. Honesty is the best policy, after all. She playfully chastised me for preferring boys to her, but soon we were texting our sweet nothings. I kept puffing and lighting cigs when I heard footsteps close to me. Mason, that ghoulish voice to freak me out, but it only worked when I was the one looking. I stayed quiet. I can smell you, little smoker. Fair point, I thought. When the steps wandered further away, I made my way for the creek, losing my footing on the log and almost losing a shoe to the muddy bed, run dry by the approaching winter. Half an hour passed, and I began to regret texting my loved one, as my battery was almost dead. Worse yet, since I'd found a new hiding spot, clouds had rolled in, and I couldn't see 5 feet in front of my face. Terror set in. I should have stayed put, but a chill came with the change in weather, and every noise in the pressing darkness stopped my heart. I wandered for some time, I cannot tell you how long. The sun had not risen, I know that, but my phone was my clock, and that clock had failed me before I could charge it. I stumbled around in the night until I happened upon an old cabin. I was scared as soon as I saw it, dilapidated and decrepit. It was a cabin from 100 horror movies that we've all seen. But the cooling morning was becoming cold, and the clouds had brought rain. I stood in contemplation for many long moments before pushing in the decaying door with no handle. I forced it only an inch, as if by the wind, and listened for the sounds of life, be that snores, breathing, or the claws of animals. In silence I was emboldened, and stepped in slowly and silently. Now I was sure I was alone. Even in the total darkness I could tell this building was truly abandoned. I found a window, feeling for furniture with my feet. Gods, it stank. The window needed no opening. It seems to have been jammed open long ago, left to cool the home before its abandonment and the wood warped from rain. I knelt down in a dry spot and smoked again, waiting the last hour or so before the sun came up. When the fire flicked, I saw nothing of any particular threat, and I nearly dozed off, sure my friends had found their own way home. After nearly 40 minutes of deathly silence, I heard a creaking. The door was opening. All of my blood ran to my feet. I could not move. I held my breath. The first purples of sunrise could be seen through the opposite window. "Are you the one they call Mason?" A ghoulish voice, but not one of my friends. This was a grown woman, with more prudence than one would expect from a cabin dweller. "You are uninvited, my young friend, and you've been smoking in here." She chuckled, shadowed in the doorway. "I could kill you for trespassing, little boy." I was shaking in perfect stillness, unable to speak or move. I fought as hard as I could to draw in a deep breath. "But you're not going to, are you? I amuse you somehow, I take it." It was a gamble. My charisma is all I could rely on, my power to ingratiate myself into almost anyone's favor, if only for a moment. "You have a certain courage. I've been watching you all night, young one. You have been afraid, but pressing forward, even into the web of a spider like me." My bravery failed me for a moment. The first rays of light crept into the window, and the glancing beams revealed her face. It was gray and pulled back, an unearthly tan from a peeling corpse, with an obvious air of beauty long since lost. Her chin, however, was completely red. There was a familiar stink to her, a doubling of the reek of the cabin. She made her way near me, but I sprang for the window frame, and she shrank from the light. "Go now, young one, and behave yourself. I will be watching you." It was then that I saw the family, gray and drained. This house was not abandoned. It was hijacked by a monster beyond my comprehension. I both knew and couldn't know. My brain rejects it to this day. The bag I'd smoked from is not something that makes people see things that aren't there. Everything I saw was real. And now, every time I see a tree line at night, any time I hear a twig snap, I know she's watching, even if she's not, and I dread, every night, that I will hear my name called ghoulishly from the woodland.